Welcome to the Heartbreak to Happiness show with Sarah Davison. If you're struggling with a breakup and you feel shocked, angry, betrayed, devastated, or sad and alone, then this podcast is for you. Best-selling author and award-winning host Sarah Davison shares how you too can get on with your life to heal, grow, and move from heartbreak to happiness. Here's your host, Sarah Davison.
Welcome back to the show where you'll learn to transform your heartbreak into happiness. I'm Sarah Davison, and today my guest is the lovely Rosie Green. She is one of the most inspiring women I know. She wears her heart on her sleeve and is hugely empowering for other women. Rosie is an award-winning journalist who also happens to be on the journey from heartbreak to happiness. She started out at Vogue, having won their Young Writers competition, and then moved on to Elle, where she worked her way up to beauty director. Rosie has worked with all major beauty brands and tried thousands of products. She's styled every Hollywood A-lister from Sarah Jessica Parker to Cameron Diaz. In 2004, Rosie moved to Red magazine, where she wrote about family life with her husband and her kids in a hugely popular column that ran for 10 years. Then, following her blindsiding marriage breakup, Rosie has documented her journey from heartbreak to happy through her writing, her blog, and her social media, where she connects with thousands of women going through devastating breakups. Now, I met Rosie when she came for a coaching session, and then she also came to my breakup recovery retreat for a 2-day weekend workshop on how to get over your breakup. I love her energy, her smile, and her positive attitude. She's really inspiring and empowering at the same time as being incredibly relatable. She's down to earth, and she's not afraid to talk about the ugly crying either. So please welcome Rosie to our show. Welcome, Rosie.
Thank you. What a lovely introduction.
Oh, it's so great to have you. Thanks so much for being a guest on our show. So a lot of people listening are going through really tough times right now, going through devastating breakups. And I know you have your own story to tell about that. Yeah. You were married for 26 years. So would you mind sharing with us your story?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I was going out with my husband for 26 years. I was married for 15. And it was that classic case of, we met at university and we fell in love, and we were like the couple least likely to split up. We were kind of, we had that kind of, we rubbed along fine together. We fancied each other. We kind of had the same values. We kind of, if you sort of, I remember him coming back from the pub, and they'd obviously had a conversation about who was dangerous, like who was likely to kind of, break out and leave their marriage. And, it was very clear that wasn't him, or, and sort of morally, he was always kind of very inter-family and very anti people who left and that kind of thing. So I just felt really, really safe. I mean, every split is hard. But for me, the big thing to deal with for me was actually the shock. It was just so shocking to me that suddenly this person that I'd known my entire life was a stranger, and was saying strange things to me and behaving in a way that I just couldn't ever imagine he would behave.
So were there warning signs then, or were you completely blindsided by it?
I was completely blindsided. I mean, in the kind of very immediate run up to, him kind of saying that he didn't want to be in the marriage, and, I'd sort of noticed that in the last couple of months almost. I mean, I guess, it's like anything, this sort of journey that we've been on, you've been on, we've all been on, makes me look back and realise there probably were warning signs that I didn't see or didn't choose to see. But to all intents and purposes, we were kind of happy. We were going on holidays, we were going for dinner, we were having sex, we were doing all those things that, a normal couple does,
Yeah. So how did you find out that your marriage was over?
Well, so, I mean, legally, I can't sort of go into the absolute crux of it, but essentially he just started behaving in a way that I would never expect him to. Started not coming home from work, kind of not, he was quite absent, and then he was very angry, and then he said, that classic line of "I love you, but I don't love you anymore," which just oh my God, the pain of that is just so horrific, isn't it?
Yeah. So going back to those early days, I mean, that early stage of breakup can be one of the most overwhelming situations that any person finds himself in, especially if you didn't see it coming, I think, and that can really take the floor from underneath your feet. So what did you do in the early days to help you get through that?
I mean, I think I learned that actually it's just day by day. And something I did was reach out to people. I think there's a lot of people, or in the olden days, people would keep that kind of shame to themselves. They would feel shame and they would feel guilt and they would feel, but actually I mean, in the very early days, I reached out to a small amount of people because I was hoping that we'd be able to make it through. So I didn't want all these people to know and judge and all that sort of stuff. But I did reach out to a few people, and I just tried to kind of keep going, like day by day. I mean, it is literally like one foot in front of the other, but I think you're right. The pain is like nothing else. I mean, by this stage of life, we've all been through horrible stuff. We've lost loved ones, we've been through massive disappointments, but actually that ego pain of rejection, I think there is nothing like that, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, it's interesting how that emotional pain actually feels like a real physical pain. Did you find that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I had was, I don't know if I had physical pain, but had physical symptoms. So I couldn't eat anything. I wrote a piece about this for Elle. I kind of lost 2 stone in about a month. I mean, I just kind of, I was just on adrenaline. I just remember this kind of, this frantic heartbeat all the time, and sort of having to do stuff with the kids and kind of go to their carol concerts, and you just sit there in this weird kind of suspended reality, just kind of looking around thinking, my entire life has changed and been smashed apart, but yet here I am saying, you need to take your recorder to school. So, sorry, in answer to your questions, I think it's about reaching out to people. For me, I started reading. I did come across you very early on, actually, because we did meet on the course, but actually I think I came to see you as well really early doors.
You did,
and
yeah.
I sort of had this survival instinct in me. I knew that I wanted to survive, and I knew that I approached it in the same way I approach most things. I read about it. I find the people that I think can help me. And I just thought, I'm not going to let this kind of kill me, basically.
Yeah, I think it's really important because you have a choice, don't you? I mean, at that point, you do have a choice, and it's a choice of either wallowing and going down with your breakup. And I know that's human nature, and a lot of the time it is so overwhelming, especially in those early days. It's all you can do is put one foot in front of the other and just keep on going. But then, the other choice is to say, you know what, this isn't going to define me for the rest of my life. I need to let it go in some way and move forward. And I think if you've got the mindset, as you did at that point, to be able to appreciate that there is a choice, and you either drag this around forever as baggage and like a grey cloud, or you step up and you move forward, however hard, then that's how we keep going. And I know that one of the ways you've done that is to share your experience with other women. So why do you think it's important to share your experiences going through that breakup?
I mean, for me, I think it really gave me clarity, because I think the thing I feel like I experienced a sort of large degree of gaslighting, whether it was meant or not meant, that kind of, like you're blowing this out of proportion, you're being too sensitive, you're doing all these kind of things, you're the kind of minimizing of the pain. This happens to 50% of people, all that kind of stuff. So I guess by sort of sharing your story and other people saying, no, that's not okay, or actually that's a really shitty situation to be in, you get a kind of strength. And actually one of the things that I've been doing on my Instagram, my website, is that people will send me their stories. Now, I knew that I was lucky because I wrote about my breakup in Red. I had written a column for 10 years about family life and, all the really funny things about having young kids, like your car's stuck together with raisins, you kind of, you're like trying to go to sleep at night and your commando crawling out of their room. Funny stuff about my husband, like the kind of just those kind of differences between men and women. So I kind of had a certain degree of, I guess, following from that, and people really loved it and related to it. And so when I went through this, I went to see my red editor, and for me, I guess it's like I just told her everything, and in a way, I think that was so helpful to me, because she knew the story. She could see the genuine pain, she could see all that, and she said, well, if you want to write, you don't have to, but if you want to write about it, then do it. And I wrote about it, and as you said, it was, it was real, it was snot and tears, and it was me saying, I've been dumped, I've been rejected, I've been left. Quite often people will put a spin on it, and I totally understand why, because they want to protect their ego, of course they do, and they don't want to be this rejected person. But I felt a duty to be honest about that, and I think because I was honest about that, it had such a major response. And then I think people said, well, it's happened to her, so I can talk about it, as and the perceived, obviously we all know we get dressed and we wear our leisure and we look rubbish, but the perceived vision of that lifestyle, working in magazines, glamorous, fun, gorgeous husband, gorgeous kids, they sort of thought, this has happened to her, it's happened to me. They could relate to that.
Yeah.
And for me, I kind of spent a lot of time Googling, like, I don't know, like Beyonce or Reese Witherspoon or all these people, or Jennifer Garner, who've obviously been through utter, and I just thought, actually, it happens to us all, and or a lot of people. And I find that helps with the ego, because you sort of think, don't you, if you're clever enough, or you're kind enough, or you're pretty enough, or you're slim enough, or you're, whatever, it won't happen. But it does happen.
It does, and it happens to everyone. I think, that's feedback that I hear from people, but I'm interested in the stories, because I know a lot of women on your Instagram at Life's Rosie connect with you, and they share their stories, and quite often you put up amazing little posts with just a little quote from some of their stories. Are there any stories that have really touched you?
Well, the first story was from my beloved cousin, a colleague of his, and he said, this was before, I think I'd written the red piece actually, and he said, she just wants to send this email to you. And it was so kind of her, because she was like 4 years on, and she just sent me this thing saying, you will be all right, it's unbelievably horrible, I've been through the same things as you, ultimately, you're a decent person, you're a good person, this is a horrible blip and you'll get there. And I was just so touched by that. She didn't need to do that, and it gave me such a strength. And then I had people's, like, friends of mine's mothers writing to me and saying, do you know what, actually, my husband did this in the 1960s and we've got over it, or I never got over it, or all this kind of stuff. And it just really gave me some clarity. And I thought, well, if it's helping me, then I think it'll help other people. So when I set up my website, which Life's Rosie, I encouraged people to send the stories if they wanted to. And, I think people find it really cathartic. And then I put them up, and people respond, and they say, oh, you're doing amazingly, or they give them encouragement. But what I think is quite interesting is, like, there was one lady recently who, her husband was obviously being horrendous. But when you're in it, it's quite hard to see that. But then she gets the feedback of people saying that's not okay. It gives her clarity, and it gives us clarity.
Yeah. And I think when you get that clarity, even if it's clarity you don't want to see or you don't want to hear, it actually gives you a bit more power, because then you're in a better informed place to do something about it.
Yes, I agree totally. And I think the support of, other women. Also, I will say that the probably 50% of the emails I get of people that are right in the pits of hell, their husband said, I've been with you for 10 years or 15 years, we've got 2 kids, I just don't feel the same anymore, and I have to say that is torturous for me, because I would say in 90% of those cases they've got someone else. Yeah. And to me, that is just the cruelest thing, because this woman is like floundering around thinking, why doesn't he feel the same? We've not done this, we've not done that. How can I change his mind? How can I do this? And you can't, because that person is infatuated with someone else, and they've seen their future with someone else. And that changes their behavior so much. So as well, that's something that I see a lot of.
Why do you think that is used as a reason? I'm just not really that into you. It's fizzled out, rather than being honest. Do you think if it's 90% of cases, as you say, it's a big number? Why do you think that is?
Because I think the guy doesn't want to face up to the person that is, the things that he's doing. And I think, if I've learned one thing, it's that, well, I've learned quite a few things, but it's that the narrative, and, including myself, the narratives we can tell ourselves to justify our behavior are unbelievable. I mean, you look at the web of lies people will construct, and then the justifications that they will tell themselves for doing terrible things. And ultimately, if they say, I've just fallen out of love with you, or you're a terrible person, I mean, that's one of the hardest things that I see, is that, because a lot of these guys feel shit, or they know they're doing something horrific, they have to make it the wife or the partner's fault. And then by doing that, they say, you're shit, you're not tidy enough, you put on weight, you never tidied the house, you never did any of those things. And the fact is, they've fallen out of love with them, and they've fallen in love with someone else, Yeah. But to justify their behavior, that's what they do. And that has a double effect of, these women, their self-esteem is so smashed already. And then they're starting to think, oh my God, well, maybe it is my fault. And, maybe I should put some more makeup on and lose some weight and do all those things. But they're on a losing wicket,
Yeah, absolutely. I think it can be incredibly damaging. I think, we can be our own worst enemies as well, by those hamster wheel questions, like, go round and round your head, and you kind of come up with answers as to, why this might be the case, which aren't always the right answers. You might be very, fit and healthy, but it's just an excuse to get out of that relationship that's being used. We can be our own worst enemies. And we have to say also that, obviously, there are women that cheat too, and it's not just and lie about things and stick. So it's not just, but I know that you focus predominantly on helping women. Another thing that I see a lot, and I wonder if you see this with the women, is friendships that change when you're going through a divorce. Do you have any experience of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally I've been really lucky. I have seen situations whereby some people can step up and some people can't. And I think, the only answer to that is to just reach out to those that can, and just be philosophical about the ones that can't, because you just don't know why that is. It might be triggering fears of theirs, that, their marriage is about to break up. It might be that they just don't have the bandwidth for it, or, it just might be that they're not that character. They're the person you go out and have a drink with, so I think the really important thing is not to think people sort of owe you something, because I think you're on a sticky wicket there. I just think actually a wide circle of friends, and spread it out a bit as well. Like, I remember once at the really bad stages of my breakup, I would literally go through phone calls like a chain smoker. I would put the phone down to my brother, and then I would call my cousin, and then I would call my friend, and then I would call, but even in my sort of depths, I was aware that I couldn't put too much on one person. I have to say, my lovely friend Tanya, who lived in Abu Dhabi, got a lot, as did my friend Viv. I did try and spread it out.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I think dumping everything on one friend can be a little bit overwhelming. So, yeah, and if you are lucky enough to have that selection of people to go through, I think that's really, really important.
Yeah.
So I know that you talk a lot about things that you do, even little small things like different products, nice smelling products, or a massage, or do those little things help make a difference, do you think, to help you get through your breakup?
I really think they do. I had a kind of aromatherapy ball. I remember I can't smell any of those things now. It's like even certain flowers take me back, it's so powerful, the smell. But yeah, definitely I think that the power of, actually aromatherapy, I think is just really lovely. And even when I felt at my worst, when I climbed into a bath, I love this aromatherapy associate. It's called like Deep Relax. It's like a sleeping pill. But actually they're just bringing out a sort of diffusion range that's cheaper called Aromaactives. But those kind of things I think make a difference. And actually I interviewed this really amazing sort of somatics and yoga teacher. And she said it's very hard to feel anxious if you feel really warm and cozy, and you've kind of, so actually I think just looking after yourself, putting on a nice cozy jumper, putting some slippers on, having a hot water bottle. I mean, obviously they're not going to make you suddenly be like but they all just help. And I think that kind of doing your hair, having a shower, it's like you've invested in yourself. You know, I do genuinely think that stuff kind of keeps you going. I mean, I feel better just having had a shower and done my makeup to talk to you.
I think that's so true though. I mean, I know during my breakup, I had a juicy tracksuit and, you know, it could have walked out of my apartment on its own by the time I finished it. I just didn't take it off because it was just cozy and slightly velvety and just comfy, you know. Yeah. And I think we do go to those things, but it can be a bit of a challenge to not do them, can't it? I mean, you can get stuck in a rut of doing these things and not washing your hair, not going out. I think it's really good advice to use some of your favorite things and not be afraid to do things a little bit differently. And I know that you are the queen of mini breaks or micro breaks, as you call them. Do you recommend those as well? Because I've seen you in some amazing places.
I do. I mean, I'm lucky, you know, I got the enviable job as a sort of spa reviewer for the Telegraph. So, you know, I kind of feel a bit guilty in that I wouldn't be able to afford to go to them all. You know, I think I would splash out on some of them, but I wouldn't be able to go to them all. I think for me, what's important is getting that distance. I wrote a piece for the Telegraph about how travel just really helps. Now, I don't think that necessarily needs to be some flashy 5-star hotel or, you know, spa, but just getting a sense of perspective, you know, if you can afford it, getting on a plane, if not going to see a friend in a different part of the country, because it's almost like that just kind of, you know, if you're at home just going through those things all the time, being stuck there, I think it's just really helpful to get a different perspective. And, you know, you can read all those books like Cheryl Strayed's Wild and all those things. And I think, you know, travel just plays such an important part. I mean, it's painful. You know, the first holiday we went on, I went with the kids who went to Abu Dhabi and, you know, they were really scared. You know, we used to go to an airport as a kind of family of 4 with big, strong, you know, daddy, and it was hard, but actually we went there and we did it and we had a nice holiday and we saw some sunshine and it was good, you know.
And quite empowering, I think, for you as well. And me, I do that with my son. The first time is scary, but actually once you've done it, you come back and think, oh, I can do that. Tick, another thing. You know,
I mean, one thing that I would say is, I mean, obviously everybody's different, but a lot of my friends who've split up have gone away by themselves with their kids. And generally I see that is quite challenging. You know, it feels that there's an absence. And so the first 3 holidays we did were all like with friends or family or going to see friends or family. And for me, that kind of worked a lot better.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So then you're not on your own at the dinner table. I remember when I took my son for dinner in one of the restaurants in the hotel. And, you know, I took him down and sat there with him. And then the next thing I know, he'd gone. He was off playing. And so I was sat there at the table on my own. And I hadn't really thought that bit through because I then felt really self-conscious. And that was really embarrassing. I felt embarrassed. I felt like people were looking at me. They probably weren't at all. Yeah. But that was really, so I quickly adapted. I always took a book with me after that. So I was like, so if it did happen, I wasn't looking like I was just sat there on my own.
And the irony, isn't it, is that it's all about self-perception, isn't it? Because you might have been embarrassed at that point, whereas, I mean, I would look over and think, oh, what a fabulous woman, you know. So it's all about how, and you say this, how you know, what lens you choose to see it through. Obviously, if you feel rubbish, you're going to feel a bit like this. But I always try, I mean, you teach that flip it technique, don't you? But I always try and sort of see it from a positive angle if I can, you know.
Yeah, I'll never forget one day I was lying by the pool and my son must have been about 3 and he was in the little paddling pools, you know, and I was watching him and this lady came over, she stormed over to me. She was like, can I ask you a question? And I was sort of a bit nervous, but I sort of went, yes. And she said, are you here on your own? And I was like, oh gosh, she's noticed, this is so embarrassing. And I said, well, yeah. She goes, just your little boy there, and pointed at my son. I said, yeah. She goes, I am so jealous. She goes, that is heaven. I'm here with my husband. He's annoying me and my 3 kids don't stop arguing. And I looked at her, I was like so gobsmacked. So I was expecting her to come out with some sort of criticism, but she was just like, I wish I was you. This is hell. And then her husband goes, come over here. What are you doing? And she sort of looked at me and said, see what I mean? And then walks off. I was like, wow, okay. And that's where I kind of started to realize, like you said, that this is all about perception. It is all about perception.
It is, and I do think, I mean, it's slow. I read this book called The Joy of Being Single, I remember, quite early days. And, obviously, I'm actually somebody that likes to be in a relationship. So it's not like I kind of, but there are, there are positives, aren't there? Especially, you're parenting, you don't have to make those kind of compromises all the time. And, there is a kind of, I wrote recently that actually, it always used to make me feel really sad, like locking the door at night, with just the three of us in there. But now I actually feel a sort of contentment at that point. I don't feel scared. I don't feel a lack, I kind of, it's ongoing, as I'm sure there are still sadnesses, but it's, time does work in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then other opportunities come up, don't they? Like dating, for example. No, I know you haven't been afraid to talk about your dating experiences, and I love reading your stories about that in the press. The one especially I loved actually was the one about getting naked for the first time.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Share that with us, because I'm sure others is going to be really interested in that.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because, I say it's so interesting. I must not say that. Maybe it's not interesting to anyone, but I mean, as I say, I met my husband at 18, kind of, so it was sort of very limited in, my friend said to me once, she was like, what did she say? She went, I've slept with more people on one holiday than you have in your entire life. Oh, that's true. I've had very limited experience, really. And so, yeah, I kind of, I did instantly know that that's something I wanted to do. And I remember talking to you actually, and you said, actually, you can get on the sites and you can just get a kind of sense that you are a person that's attractive to other people, that they will want to, they'll want to see you and stuff. And I remember actually on your retreat, I think you asked us what our biggest fears were. And I said to the guy, to this lovely guy next, we had to do it together. And I was like, I just think nobody's ever going to love me. And bless him, he was a bit like, I think you're going to be all right. It was so sweet. And I was like, I genuinely thought at that point that, that I was just never going to meet anyone, or no one would ever be interested, or, or that I was sort of set up for a life of those kind of disappointments, so, but I sort of knew that I wanted to meet someone. And then you get in that whole kind of thing about, should I be strong by myself? Should I not need someone else? All that kind of stuff. Anyway, I thought, sod that. I'm going to go out some dates. So I went out on a few dates with people who sort of messaged me through Instagram and things. That's the way the kids do it.
Sliding into your DMs.
Yeah, exactly. So the first guy that I went on a few dates, it was like deeply age inappropriate and but just really lovely and fun and interesting, and he was younger, and I just thought, I just thought, sod it. And I'd read these brilliant books from my friend had given me called, well, she first of all gave me, it's called A Breakup Because It's Broken, which was like, get over it, which I thought was brilliant. And then she gave me a book called It's Just a Date, which it was written by the same people, one of the Sex and the City writers, and they just really give it to you straight. And they're like, and their big thing is like, go and see it as a nice evening. Do not invest like your entire future happiness. Don't Google stalk them. Don't do any of those things. Don't let it become this massive thing. So I was quite laissez-faire about it until about 5 minutes before, when I just started sort of sweating profusely. But I had a really nice night, ended up having a snog, and just kind of, just sort of thought, okay, I think I'm going to be all right, basically. And then signed up to this online thing called Hinge. And again, like part of me was like, I can hide that, because in a way, does it feel a bit uncool? Does it feel a bit desperate? But I thought it's not fair to all those women, because actually, I don't know if you've been set up with people, but that to me generally doesn't work.
There's a lot of pressure then, isn't there, for it to work?
And I think the chances, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but the chances of you fancying them and them fancying you and you being kind of, I don't know. Whereas like, I do think, those algorithms do work to a certain extent, although there are a lot of like weird photos of like topless men. It's always the men that shouldn't be topless, right? Like, up nostril shots and things like that.
What's the bathroom? What is it about having in front of a urinal? I just don't really get that picture. Yeah,
there's the urinal picture. There's always some kind of sporty picture. Mind you, I think as women, we're just as bad. We fall into all those cliches, don't we? And in actual fact, once we got over the naked thing, I just think it's so interesting about what guys find, what they're looking for on the profiles versus what we're putting up a gorgeous picture of us looking great in our bikini or whatever. And I think to a lot of them, that's a bit kind of like one said to me, so I've got some photos from like the magazines and stuff. So I thought, oh, well, that's where I look really nice. I'm going to put those up. But I think they genuinely are like, why have you got professional photos on your thing? What kind of tosser are you? And I can now I can see that. You know what I mean?
I love that.
Yeah. Getting naked. I think naked is, I interviewed this amazing woman, this sex doctor called Dr. Karen Gurney. And she wrote a book called Mind the Gap, I think it's called, about sort of the orgasm difference. But she said the biggest fear for women is in having sex for the first time is their body. They're so conscious about their body.
Yeah.
And men's biggest fear is performance. So it's very interesting that they're different things. And I don't know. I think in a way you just have to be like 1, 2, 3, fuck it, basically.
I think that's good advice. 1, 2, 3, fuck it, yeah.
Get some nice underwear. I just think nice underwear is like, I had such a terrible underwear drawer, and now I'm like, do you know what? That has got to be zhuzhed up.
Yeah, I think that is one thing that you can always do at the end of a relationship, whether it's a short relationship or a long one. I think getting rid of that underwear, getting a new couple of choices in there, always boosts your mood, makes you feel more attractive.
Yeah. And I think, back to the whole sort of spa underwear, I realise all these things are money. And, when you're kind of going through the horribleness of not knowing what your finances are and all that sort of stuff, then I can totally see. But I think sometimes you just have to say, okay, I am going to spend that on myself, whether it's like intimacy or if it's La Perla, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And whatever your budget is, just invest in yourself, basically. Don't put those barriers in, treat yourself to some stuff.
I think it's a good point because, these things could be seen as a little bit shallow, they're exterior, but what it does is it gives you a confidence boost when you really need it, especially if someone's cheated on you or they've gone off with somebody else, as we were talking about earlier. I mean, betrayal can have a massive impact, and those little things can really boost your mood.
Yeah.
But I think also it's about learning from the past, right? It's about learning from your past mistakes, because the past has a funny way of teaching us the same lessons over and over again until we sit up and listen. So when you're dating now, are you looking for different things, do you find, than previously?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, what you kind of look for subconsciously and consciously. I mean, I kind of I feel like I try to really learn lessons, and I think a lot of what we're programmed to be attracted to has come from childhood. And for me, I definitely I met my husband young. I was like, okay, he's a safe bet, ironically. So in a way, I was never brave in my choices. I never, and he was very straight, very solid. And so to me, that kind of, creative stuff is really important and things. But really, and I think we had a chat about this, you kind of write down a list of what really matters, and what really matters is kindness and openness. And to me, it's somebody who's able to really think about emotions and process them and think about, the impact of what they're saying, what they're doing. And I'm learning that too, because I just feel like, we so think that our lens is the only lens, don't we?
Yes.
And actually, I think men can see things very differently to us. So for me, it's about sort of understanding that,
Yeah. I think being open-minded as well, not always going for the same things you've always gone for, being open to trying new things and just working out, like you said, what you need rather than just what you want is important too. Because if you've learned.
And I have friends who are, they're kind of all this stuff, which, I mean, the people watching may or may not know, the sort of avoidant relationships, people are attracted to people who aren't attracted to them, people who are kind of anxiously attached, all those things that you can read. And I think you can read too much into those sometimes, because I think we're all a bit like that in some way. But just kind of recognizing, like, are you attracted to bastards? Like, why is that? Maybe that's not such a good idea. It's, or are you, do you find that sexy? Why do you find that sexy? And does that conflict with you actually want to settle down and have a nice relationship? So that's that to me is just thinking about it a bit more.
Yeah. And I know it takes a while, doesn't it, when you've been hurt to think, I have a lot of clients that say, I never want to date again. I could never trust anyone again. What would you say to them?
Well, I think people are really different. And weirdly, I totally see that and I totally understand it, but I don't feel that actually. Like, I don't know why. I mean, what I did do, I think, for quite a long time is like, and maybe still do a bit, is like, have some barriers up so that I kind of don't get hurt. So I don't give too much initially, or I don't allow myself to sort of feel secure because I know that it can all go away. But I also think, the one lesson that it teaches us is that we are all right by ourselves. So this is the icing on the cake, basically. I think if you're looking for it to make you happy, then that's probably a bad sign. It will make you happy. It'll add an extra layer of happiness, but you have to, if you're holding on to it really tight, that's only going to go wrong, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So I always ask my guests one question, and that is, what piece of advice would you give to someone from your own breakup experience that has helped you get through when life got really tough?
I think it would be sharing, actually. It would be sharing your pain, sharing your vulnerability, being open, saying, yes, please, I do need help, And I think if you've been a good person, you've given a lot during your life, then people are happy to help. But I think if you're closed and if you're giving them mixed messages, they don't know how to do that. So I would just say, be open with it, basically. Tell people how you feel, explain to them the situation, and they will help.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Always ask for help when you need it. Now, I know you've written a book, How to Heal a Broken Heart, From Bottom to Reinvention, my ugly crying on the bathroom floor. Tell us a little bit about that, and when can we get a copy? I can't wait.
It's going to come out February the 11th, I think, so near to Valentine's Day. So I sort of had the idea I've always wanted to write a book, ironically. So, in a way, this has helped me to do it. And it's just, it's a book that I wanted to write to help people, which it's sort of part memoir, part manual. So it's a kind of self-help, but also got my story in. And actually my publisher had a really brilliant thing. She called it stealth help. So it's kind of, you're reading the story, but you're getting help as you're reading it, basically.
I love that.
Just like, a lot of the techniques you teach, it's about understanding that the brain can often sort of sabotage us and sabotage our recovery. So, to me, that was really interesting, all that kind of internet stalking that you do, the way you kind of crave that person like crack. I mean, it's not even necessarily that person you crave, but you just want to heal that rejection, and understanding the effects on our body. And it kind of follows the trajectory, through the kind of various stages, the kind of anger and the grief, and then the dating, and then the sex, and all those things. So it's like, it's a kind of a linear, story of not linear, chronological story of recovery that people may feel at different times. But I just hope it's really helpful for people to see that, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and also to know, that other people are going through the same kind of feelings.
I think it's brilliant, amazing, and totally inspiring. So that's it for today's episode, but do go along and check out Rosie's website, www.lifesrosie.co.uk, and I look forward to you joining me on our next episode.
That's it for today's episode of Heartbreak to Happiness. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review to win a free ticket to one of Sarah's virtual retreats. The retreats are a transformative combination of live webinars with Sarah herself, coupled with empowering online video programs designed to help you cope better with your breakup and start feeling happy again. For more details, head on over to heartbreaktohappinesspodcast.com, where you can also get a copy of Sarah's free gift. Thank you, and join us again on the next episode for another dose of Heartbreak to Happiness.